Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to the live broadcast of Masters in Fitness Business podcast. And today I am so pumped. I have a guy that I've been wanting to get on the show for a long time, one of my mentors and a good friend of mine, one of the founding members of the STS, Rick Mayo. Rick, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jim. Great. Finally, so happy to finally be here, man. Looking forward to it. Appreciate it.
Yeah. I'm so pumped to have you on. And you are you're the godfather of the STS and soon to be godfather of fitness and franchises. So just for you guys that don't know Rick, if you aren't familiar with Rick, we'll orientate you from crawling out from underneath your rock. Let's see. Rick has been in the fitness business. When did you start Better Bodies?
Well, it was actually Good Bodies.
Good Bodies. Sorry.
Yeah,
Good
Better
Bodies
would have been a better name, which, as we learned later, but we started out right out of the gate fumbling with the name Good Bodies. That was in 1992.
92.
Yeah,
so he's had a brick and mortar club since 1992. His club boasts having the highest revenue for any personal training facility in the nation. So that's pretty eye-catching. He's one of the founding members of the Secret Trainer Society. He runs Alloy licensing for gyms and fitness studios, soon to be Alloy franchise. He's taken into a franchise model. So he's going from major status to baller status. And he's also sits on the board of Association of Fitness Studios. Did I miss anything?
No, man, I sit on a lot of boards, but let's just get this thing rolling so we don't bore people to tears before we even get started.
And he's super modest as well. So, but smart guy. So let's roll right into it. So when one of the first times I met you, I saw you present at Perform Better, but first time I met you in my first STS meeting when I was trying to get into the STS, you were telling me the story about Better Bodies and what happened. So you started Better Bodies in 1992, and you were bigwig. You were training celebrities down there in Atlanta. We're training Madonna and a bunch of other people, and you thought you had it made. And then something happened that changed everything, changed the course of your life. You want to share that story with the listeners?
Yeah, man. So you're absolutely right. So we were actually called Good Bodies originally. And, we opened in 92. And at that point in time, you had to sort of explain what personal training was, right? People would come in the gym and be like, what does a personal trainer do? Mm-hmm. And we'd have to sort of explain the concept of it, which seems kind of foreign now. Somewhere between 92 and 98, we doubled our space. So we were 1,500 square feet. So one retail bay. And then we went to 2 retail bays. And then in 98, man, we were killing it. So you're right. We had all these celebrity clients, and personal training was just sort of coming into light as far as something that the cool kids would do, if you will, which is why we had all these rich, famous people here. And we did $1 million out of 3,000 square feet in 1998, which, like, man, you and I track numbers. You talk about business on here all the time. That's pretty friggin' good, But as per usual, think you're the smartest guy in the world, and some things changed. And so a couple of my guys were like, man, this dude, not that smart. We're going to go get our own place. And they left, and they were holding like 35%, 40% almost of my total revenue, and had a couple of like somebody having an affair with someone else. I mean, it's just like a disaster, right? So I went from like smartest guy in the world with a mortgage, kids, and married and all this at this point to like, overnight going from essentially $83,000 a month to $12,000 a month. So certainly a tough pill to swallow and a lesson learned. But as far as the name is concerned, one of the things I can distinctly remember about that event, because it's so traumatic, right, was I had a guy leaving, and he and I were kind of back and forth, and me saying, man, I've got the lease here. I've got all this marketing. Like, these are my clients, But back then they were in the structure of a 1099 subcontractor. So they were essentially self-employed, which you can't even do legally now. And he was like, nah, man, I'm going down the street. I'm going to open my own gym, and I'm going to call it Better Bodies. And I was like, what? He wouldn't, sort of like, damn, why didn't I think of that? I'm Good Bodies. He's going to be Better Bodies. And I was like, I'm going to open Best Bodies. Like, what do you do with that? Right. Like,
right.
Infinitely better bodies. I mean, like, shit, he had me, So Kind of funny looking back on it now, but yeah, man, it was a tough time. It's like, you don't have to get a real job now. I've got a business background. Fitness was a hobby. It's like, I really thought I'd figured it out. I can wear sweatpants to work every day and I'm so smart, And as it turns out, like just like any other business, it's like you got to suck it up and run business systems and run your business like a real business, which it just took me figuring it out on my own to figure that out. So yeah, man, it was a humble pie, like the whole humble pie, all in about 3 months.
Yeah. But we're kind of doing the show backwards, because I always end up with like my 3 questions, which is my favorite part of the show. And the first question is always, what was your most successful failure? And by that, I mean, what at the time seemed like a devastating loss that you weren't going to be able to recover from, but you were able to take valuable lessons from that and apply it and use that to propel you to greater success down the road. So you went from $83,000 a month in gross revenue to $12,000 a month gross revenue. I'm sure there were some sleepless nights, some serious heart-to-hearts with your wife at the kitchen table. Like, walk us through that. How did you go from that to now creating a franchise? Yeah,
no, it's a good point. So I think a lot of people have been through this. I mean, fitness is not easy. If your listeners are independent owners, man, a lot of times your budget's bootstrapped and you just got a lot of obstacles, right? And so for me, I was ready to just throw in the towel, right? Like, hey, I'm gonna have to get a real job now. And so I sat down with some of my mentors, even sat down with my father at the time and said, look, man, like, I'm gonna have to get a real job. And every single person that cared at all about me or knew me was like, no, you need to suck it up and fix your business, because this is the only job that you've ever had. But by the way, those are the same challenges we all have in our businesses. So don't think moving into another type of business is going to change anything. You got to learn how to do business no matter what your business is. So I was like, oh shit, like, I'm going to have to suck it up. And look, let's face it, it's a fun thing to do. It's a noble thing to do to help people. So I loved what I did. I just had figured it would be easy for whatever dumb reason. I mean, you learn. I was 22 years old when I opened. You don't know till you know. So we sort of scratched our way back. We started building business systems, and we started with the easy stuff, you guys. So like training, that was something I knew well. So like when a new client comes to the gym, how do they enter the gym? How do they get to the programs? What's our philosophy around that? Let's own that as a business so that we don't get burned again when we have coaches that sort of own their clients and their own processes and then lead, right? These sort of rock stars, if you will. So we started there, and people always say, well, how did you have the time to do that? Like, if you're working from 6 a.m. until noon, getting in a crappy workout, maybe eating some stinky food out of a cooler, coming back and going 4 to 9 at night, when the hell do you sit down and write an ops manual? And that was exactly what I was up against. I'm like, I don't have time for this, right? Like, where does this start? So as down on my luck as I was financially, I shouldn't say luck, my own doing, but as down as we were financially, I still sucked it up and hired someone to come in and literally just follow me around with a notepad, $15 an hour, which was pretty good money at the time. And I'm like, anytime I say anything or if I explain something to someone that sounds relevant around programming, I want you to write it down. And then they would take that and then turn it into, essentially, over 6 weeks, that turned into our program design manual, which was the first thing that we systemized. Then I could look to, turn to someone else and say, hey, this is how we do things, right? And I could bring someone on that wasn't a rock star, that didn't have a specialty. They were doing my stuff. And now I had a thing to give them, if you would, right? And it was all written. It was just in a workbook, but we had something. And then that led to sales and customer service and systems around everything that we do. But it took about 1.5 years to get back on track, to get our clientele back up where it was. Then we landed on this really interesting model. It turns out that systemizing our business, to answer your question, the most difficult time ever became the impetus to build systems, which then helped us start consulting with other personal training clubs because our revenues were growing higher and higher than ever, right? We built first ever boot camp, large group. We call it team now, but it was just large group. We started training our one-on-ones in this 2 to 4 construct, and all these things that no one was doing, we were just sort of figuring out as we go. Later turned into a consulting business, helping other training club owners. And then one day a Gold's Gym guy walked in here. It was a Saturday morning. We had like 10 people, 4 deep in small group, 30 people in team, which is large group, all at the same time. It was a madhouse. And he was like, hey, listen, is there any way you could take this thing and drop it into my gym to replace my personal training department? you know, and at the time it was like, you know, you're those guys, we're these guys. That's kind of our market position. But I thought, you know, what a cool challenge. Like if we could take a training club and drop it in as a business within a business, you know, into this Gold's Gym, would that work? So we were like, sure, let's try it. Right. Our business was kind of on autopilot. We had the right team in place. So yeah, man, we dropped it in this Gold's Gym and it went really well. And then it just jumped off. And so, you know, fast forward to now, and we've licensed a couple thousand clubs worldwide. I mean, behind every banner, you name it, from Gold's Gym to Anytime Fitness to CrossFit to individual clubs like yours, mine, you know, you name it. And so it's been humbling, awesome experience to see, you know, at a time when I really just was going to give up and do something else, to suck it up, systemize my business, and to have that actually manifest itself into something bigger than my four walls or even anything I can imagine, has been super cool. And I would love to tell you that like it was the master plan all along, you know, I'm going to build these systems and like franchise them. And I would be lying, completely lying, right? If the guy didn't come in here and beat me over the head with it and ask me for it, I would have never even licensed, which would have never led to franchise or anything. So
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a long story, but yeah, man, that's how it went down.
Yeah, that's a great story, you know, because, you know, I think a lot of trainers fall into that same boat where something happens or it gets hard, and business is hard, like you said. And that's a great point. Business is hard no matter what business you're in. There's always going to be competitions. There's always going to be challenges. It's just business, and business is hard. You have to be able to activate your grind gene and go at it. But there's a lot of people that, you know, you talk to any like business owners, and there are times when they want to burn it down and times when they love it. And that's, you know, probably all before lunch. But you talk to some of the young trainers, and that's the reason they get out. They're like, you know, I love training, but I'm not going to be able to make a living at this. So I'm going to go and I'm going to pursue my other degree. And they go into some job that they hate. But you were able to stick to it thanks to the people you had in your life. And you went from a 22-year-old kid who didn't know anything about business to almost losing your business. And now you're hanging out with, you know, some of the biggest chain gyms in the world and talking to venture capital people, franchising your model. I mean, so that is truly an inspiration, and anybody can do it as long as you're willing to put in the work. And when you were talking about your systems, I think a lot of people, you talk to some young trainers and they'll say, well, I don't have any systems. Sure you do, because I can guarantee you every time you train a client, you go through some of the same things, same checklist, same items, same order, everything. So there's a system there. You just don't have it written down. So the fact that you hired somebody to follow you around and basically ghostwrite your operations manual is genius. And I think anybody can do that, because I think everybody that's successful has a system. They just don't have it written down. Now, you've dealt with thousands of gym owners. Do you find that to be the case?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, listen, the reason we have a licensing business is people might recognize they need them, and then they're like, hey, I'm not going to take the time to build them. If I did, I would agree with what you've built. So just give me some bandwidth. And thankfully, we've been able to come in at a price point that makes sense, right? But yeah, I mean, anybody, like, listen, if I can do it, anyone can do it. And I wouldn't say like you got more grit or whatever, but I think, you know, the realization that it is hard, and you're absolutely right that every business has the same challenges. So people be like, oh man, fitness is hard or training is hard. I'm like, dude, every business is hard. You know, I'm part of other business coaching groups where I'm being coached, right? And I sit at the table with other types of business owners, you know, and I think I have challenges, and then I'll talk to a guy across the table who's got a pest control business with 25,000 customers, right? And imagine the labor involved in putting guys in trucks to drive out and spray lawns, right? And then you got a guy who has this mysterious criminal record, and that pops up. Or, you know, you got a guy taking a nap on instead of like spraying lawns that he's supposed to. And I'm like, imagine the massive amount of logistical challenges that guy has, right? So like, I thought I had issues in a small business, but mine sometimes even seems small. But you got to get out of your head a little bit, look around. Like, everybody's business is hard. Suck it up, you know. I don't know what else to say. Yeah.
Life is hard.
Yeah, well,
So,
exactly. Like, yeah,
so go out and get yours.
that, like Jordan Peterson dude, you know, like he's kind of a crazy dude, but one thing I like about it is he like says like, listen, life is hard, and that's pessimistic, right? Like it's really hard, and people are mean, and like shit happens, and like that sounds horrible. Like why would you say that? Well, you know, the good news is like we're built to withstand that, right? Like as human beings, like we can overcome that, and you shouldn't like run away from it if it's hard. Like that's the good stuff, right? Like if I didn't plow through that time and get that good advice and go through the hardships to try to come out on the other side better, I wouldn't be anywhere close to where I am right now. You know, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to help more gyms and more end users or their members, you know, worldwide. I wouldn't. So like I would say that the hard stuff is the good stuff. You know, that's where things happen. So like as much as it sucks, try to embrace it a little bit because that's what life's about. You're built to overcome hardships as human beings. So like dig in, man. Like this is the good stuff, you know. That's the fun part, really.
Yeah, and that's where the real growth and the bonding occurs. I
Yeah.
mean, because there's ever any time that you go through some shit with somebody and you guys come out the other side, you guys can bond over that for the rest of your life.
Yep.
You know, because that's where the real growth, that's where the rubber hits the road in
Yeah,
situations.
you're building, you know, in those situations where you're trying to figure something out. And I can remember having different challenges, you know, like some of your listeners may be on the floor from 6 to noon and 4 to 8 at night working in their business like that. And it's like, I had challenges then too. Like, am I going to get enough sleep, or, you know, have I prepped my food, or what am I going to have for lunch? Or am I going to get a workout in, you know? Now I'm solving different problems now. They're not any easier or any harder. They're just different problems. You know, sometimes I wish I had my old problems, honestly. Sometimes I'm glad I have my new problems, but at the end of the day, it's the same shit. You know, it's like, you got to work hard, you got to solve problems, and you got to just keep plowing forward, you know?
Yeah, I agree 100%. So that was my next question is like, because we talk about systems a lot on this show and how important they are to running a profitable business. And obviously they've been the secret to the genesis and the secret to your success as you've grown and evolved over the years and evolved those systems. So, and my first question was going to be, where do you start? But you answered that question by hiring the person to follow you and write down those systems. So as far as like when you talk about business systems, and with Alloy, with the licensee, you guys have worked with literally thousands of gyms all over the world, big and little. So where do you recommend people? And then when they get your Alloy program, it has all the systems stuff in there they can start to implement right away. So where do people start? What's the top priority? What do you see as the top priority to implement to have a successful fitness business?
I would say in this day and age, it would be marketing and customer acquisition. You know, all the brands that we work with, I could be sitting in a round table meeting with some of the biggest brands, whether it be Planet or Anytime or these guys, and like these really good owners, right? These guys own 40, 50, sometimes 90 plus gyms. You imagine managing like $87 million in gym revenue every year. It's like, all right, that's pretty good, right? And these are the same people that are saying the same things that we're saying in these small marketing groups, which is like, man, it's really expensive to get customers right now, right? Like I would say that would be the best place to systemize. And so if you don't know it, there's 1,000,001 vendors that are, and folks that can help you, systemize your marketing, like ways that you get members to the front door and then have your KPIs around that. So I'll just share with you what we use, like our high level KPIs, and everything leads to those, right? So this is the best way to systemize your business. It's sort of like the old Peter Drucker, what gets measured gets managed, right? So if you pay attention to these numbers, it's going to force you to pay attention to the moving parts that feed these numbers, right? So first it's leads, right? So how many leads are you getting to your gym? And that could be through digital, walk-ins, it could be referrals, whatever. And obviously you need to track the source, because if you're seeing that you're getting some leads are more easily converted or whatever, I mean, I think intuitively we know referrals are easy to convert than a digital lead, something like a Facebook lead, something. But, you need to track that. So leads first. And then how many leads did you book to come in to your gym, right? Because that's the key. You've got to get warm bodies into your physical space to make money. So it's leads to, we call it book rate, right? So how many of leads did you book to come in your gym, right? As a percentage. And then of the ones that were booked, because this is a whole nother step, how many of them actually showed up? Because as you guys know, sometimes you'll book your first assessment or fitness consultation. We call it starting point session, whatever that is, right? And they don't show up. So how do you get them to actually show up, right? And then of the ones that show up, how many do you close? So when I look at our high level metrics from Crop Duster Hype, which is how I run my gyms at this point, it's like total number of leads, book rate, show rate, and close rate. And the last one's retention. Because those are all, all the first KPIs are on the front end, and retention is what you need to plug the dike and create this groundswell of revenue over time, right? You've got to have a good retention model. So those are the things we look at. Then when you start breaking your business down, hang on, I'm gonna plug my computer in. When you start breaking your business down into smaller steps, all of your other processes feed those things, right? So if I'm looking at, hey, if I'm going to work on like my trainers and their interaction with their clients, well, if my clients are having a better experience or getting and reaching their goals, if I plug in, say, a body part analysis machine, I have to look at my higher level numbers and say, like, well, if I'm using, say, an InBody, which is the one that we choose, is that going to enhance the customer experience all for the sake of what? Well, increasing results, sure, but driving retention, right? Or if I'm going to change if I'm going to rebrand, or if I'm going to, run this marketing, is that going to drive me more leads? And if so, what kind of leads, right? How do I reach out to them to get them to book? Is it on the front desk? Is it a confirmation? What is that? So all these little processes, but if you reverse engineer your business by starting with your high level metrics and then build your processes to drive those, I think that's really the way to do it. So that's where I would systemize. And in this day and age, I would say that the marketing and the customer acquisition is probably the biggest struggle that we have. It's just expensive, and it can get a bit complicated.
Yeah, and it's gotten even more complicated with Facebook changing their algorithm.
Yeah, which is every week, it seems like, right?
Right, exactly. But it seems to keep getting progressively harder. The
Right.
cost per lead, per click keeps going up. So it's forced other people to look at other avenues of marketing. But when you talked about book rate,
yeah.
Question I have is, do you find that if they pay something for the booking, the show up rate is higher?
It is. So, there's always this sort of argument, if you will, between, do you run let's use Facebook as an example. If you run a Facebook ad and it's for a free 7 days, as an example, which is one of sort of our evergreen hooks, right? Is that good or bad? It's like, well, it depends. Yes, right? On one hand, you're going to get a lot of leads. You are. Now, are you going to notice that the quality of those leads is lower, meaning you're going to get less of a book rate and less of a show rate? The answer is yes. But the leads are less expensive, and you're going to get a lot of them. So it's more of an averages game. Now, if you're putting your leads in front of the right people, right age, right income, whatever the metrics that you can sort of cull out for your crowd that you're targeting, better off you're going to be. Still a volume play. That'd be really good for a business that's new, right? That's just looking for awareness and just needs as many opportunities as they can. Now, paid leads, are they better quality? 100%, right? They are, but you're going to get less of them. So if you're more of a mature business, maybe you run more of a paid ad because you're going to get less volume, but the ones you get in are going to be a lot easier to close, right? And you're looking more at a retention model if you're nearly full, as an example. So they both have their positives and negatives, really. Just depends on where you are in your business. We'll run split ads, like we'll run both at the same time and see, and it always ends up the same way. We get a lot more leads with the freebie. They're all cheaper to get in, but they're harder to book, right? And our percentage of closing is so much lower. The paid ads, less overall leads, but the ones we get always book and always show, and closing is super easy. So yeah, it's one half dozen of the other, really.
Yeah, and I think it depends on your model too, because I think some models are a lower volume model and they can't handle huge influxes of new clients. Yep. So I think that paid model would serve them better.
Yeah, and typically if you're a smaller model like that with less volume, you're normally at a higher price point, right? Or you're not making money. Like you can't run a boot camp model with a group size of 10 people. It's like you just can't make enough money. So typically those are going to be higher priced models, right? To make that smaller group, smaller size work, whether it's one-on-one or what we call small group, which is up to 6. That's the case. A paid ad makes a lot of sense because you're going to ask more people for more money on the back end, right?
Yeah, I agree. So it all depends on what works for you and what works in your market. Yeah. So beyond marketing and customer acquisitions, what's the next step? What's the next system that you would recommend people implement or look into?
Honestly, I would say follow the KPIs, the customer journey from the time they first interact with your brand until they're there 10 years later, right? So what does that mean? Well, we're going to systemize our marketing approach, and we're going to look at those metrics, and we're going to make smart decisions. We're not just going to throw money at something for a month or two and say it does or doesn't work, right? We're going to make smart decisions. We're going to look at where our leads are coming from, right? book, show, get them in the gym. So book, show, and then close them, right? That goes to sales. So it's like, all right, first I'm going to dial in my marketing, make sure I can get warm bodies in my gym because I can't make money unless they're there. Then I'm going to have a sales approach. So once they walk in my gym, I need to have a sales system. So we have a scripted 1-hour sales system, and it allows us to obtain the information that we need to train them correctly. But more importantly, it tees them up to be asked for a sale, right, at the end of that session. So it's like, people learn in different ways. So this is just an example of like a systematic sales system. So we know that people are auditory learners. Some people like to see things. Some people like to touch things. And you really don't know who they are. So, but if you set your session up to sort of teach them, because we want to be prescriptive in our sale, teach them along the way, you want to kind of touch on all those different learning, right, mechanisms for people. So we set it up for that based on the science. So at the end, when you sit down and say, hey, our most successful clients do this, you're doing it prescriptively, right, as an expert, because you've aligned yourself as an expert in this process. And remember, when you're asking for 3, 4, 5, even $200 a month for 12 months or whatever, even if it's month to month, that's a lot tougher than a $10 membership down the street. So it's a less transactional relationship than it is a coach client type of relationship, right? So you have to establish yourself as an expert and then make a prescriptive sale. So I'd say start out with marketing, then systemize sales, then have a systemized induction system. So after the sale, based on the information that you've obtained, where do they go in your systems, right? Where does the person that's 320 pounds that hasn't worked out forever, that's diabetic, where do they go if they can only afford large group training and that's something you're offering? Do you have something for them? You might want to, right? So the tie-in from the time that you induct them to get them to the service, right? And then I would say, lastly, what is the service? Meaning, like, those are your programs themselves. So how are people being serviced well, ongoing? And that's going to be your retention rate. And that means not only are they reaching their goals, but are they having a great customer experience every time they come in? It comes down to facility layout. What do your towels look like? How are your trainers interacting with them? Who reaches out if they don't show up? There's all these little systematic approaches. But if you just go back to your high-level metrics, there's a system for each one, right? So people always ask me, really? Well, what's your system then for between them booking? There's a lead, you get them booked. How do you get them to come in the gym? I'm like, simple. We shoot a basic video showing one of our clients having just gone through that first session, right? And that is embedded in a text message and an email that goes to that customer saying, hey, I'm Sally. I just did my starting point session here at Alloy. It was amazing, and it's a voiceover of this person doing some of these movements. It's like, great. Because I might not have worked out before. I don't want to go in and be assessed, right? I'm like super nervous. They're going to squeeze my fat, make me take my shirt off and take pictures of me or something. So to have somebody that looks like me saying, hey, it was great, and see maybe some of the things they're going through brings down some of the anxiety, right? So it's like, awesome. I look like that person. I'm going to really enjoy this. So yes, there are systems in every one of these steps that can increase those KPIs. So I hope that makes sense, but just follow those along. Leads to book, book to show to close, sales, and then ongoing is like everything that happens in your business with your existing customers.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. I love it how you break it down and make it so simple. And I want to go back and unpack that a little bit, because I know Tim Lyons, and you were on his podcast, Joe Rogan style down there.
Yeah, but, exactly, right. Yeah, that got a little out of hand. There's a little bit of some extra curricular foods and spirits and whatnot that contributed to that. But yeah, it was fun. Good time.
Yeah, that makes it for a good time and a good podcast. But I know Tim always talks about I can get you as many leads as you can handle, but if you don't have a system to convert them, to get them in and get them on trial and to convert them, then, you're just throwing, pearls before swine, so to speak. So I think sales system is super, super important. And then when you talked about the videos and the onboarding, once you do get them, I had Don Murphy on, and that guy has he has it down. His onboarding system is really, really tight and impressive. So let's talk about what are some of the key points of a successful sales system that you found.
Yeah. So, it's been proven time and time again, even the best salespeople in the world sell better working off of some type of a script, right? Doesn't mean that it's a verbatim script, but there are best practices around sales, right? Even for super talented people. So it would be crazy to ignore that. So give your sales teams scripted play, and then role play the shit out of it. Nobody does this stuff. It's like, this is like doing the simple stuff, right? It's like you're trying to run in a football analogy, you're trying to run some double reverse pass like thing, and you don't even learn how to block and tackle yet. Like, does your salesperson even know what to say when, right? So you script out the sales process, and then you got to practice, right? So I would say that based on what you do in your gym and what you find to be valuable, build it based on, again, a little bit of peeling the onion. So I'll just give you ours, right? You break it down. First fourth, if you will, peel the onion. This is like your listener, right? Somebody learns that way. So all you do is ask enough why questions to get down to the root of why someone's there. It's super easy. You're going to have to role play it, right? You got to have to work on it. But I mean, imagine this. Somebody comes in, they say, I want to lose 20 pounds. Your question should be, well, tell me why 20 pounds. And they say something like, well, I don't know. It's like that was when I felt my best, like 5 years ago. I think I'd like to get back down there, maybe when my knees are hurting a little bit. It's like, oh, why do you think your knees are hurting? You can just keep digging, like, why 20 pounds? Why now? Dig down to the center, peel that onion until you get to the core of why they're there. Sometimes you'll find out that this is always interesting phenomenon psychologically, Jim, where they're like if I sat down with a guy like you who's all buffed up, right? And I'm like this chubby, out of shape guy, which I'm actually getting there. So I'm fighting it, baby. I'm fighting it. But like if I sat down with you and said, look, man, and you told me, like, Rick, what are your goals? What do you want? I'm thinking that you think that I need to lose weight, right? Like, of course you do. Like, I'm here, probably a little self-conscious. I'm this out of shape dude looking at this buffed up guy like you, and I'm thinking this guy thinks I'm a loser. So you'll find that they'll tell you what they think that you want to hear. Like, it's almost like a question, right? Like, I want to lose weight. It's like, well, I don't know, do you? So you'd be like, well, tell me why you want to lose weight. Then I might say, like, well, it's not so much the weight as it is like, my kids are in high school. I'm really concerned about like being healthy for them long term. And I got this weird report from the doctor. And turns out that's why I'm there. Well, that would be really good to know, even as you go into training in the long term. Because if I think your sole goal is to get buff for the beach next year, I'm pushing you to that, right? How's your eating? How's this? How's that? Well, if your goal is just to be more active and to be healthy, that's a different goal. Like, you don't need to look good in a Speedo, man. You just need to like make some decent choices and move around a little bit more. Totally different kind of goal. But if you don't peel the onion, you don't get there, right? So that's the first fourth, and that's why we do it that way. Get down, and sometimes people will cry, and it gets really emotional, and that's awesome. Like, if you get to that point, you got them, right? And you can really pull them. So you peel the onion first. We like to use functional movement screen next. That's the kind of the see it person, right? So you take them out on the floor. There's a pole. There's a dowel. If any of you guys are familiar with functional movement screen, I'm not here to debate like the merits of it overall, what it does, what it's not. We like it, but I really think it's undervalued as a sales tool. People see it, and what do they always say to us? And Jim, I think you run it. It's like, man, I've never done this before.
Right.
You know what that tells them is like, if they go down and try to join an Orange Theory or an F45 or something, it's like, hey, come in, try a free workout. If you survive it, stay. If not, peace out, right? Well, we're trying to say like, no. When you come here, there's a reason why you're here. This shows people that there's a process to what we do, and we're placing you in a certain service or level of something for a reason, right? So you might end up doing a version of what someone else is doing. There's a reason why you're there. That's a huge value to someone. A little bit of what about me? And when you look at where the pendulum swings in fitness, some of the trends are saying specificity, right? So that pendulum is swinging back from like everybody does the same stuff in a class to like, no, what about me, right? And that's one way to do that. Even if you're in a large group setting, at least you can drive them to the right option. Then we do a sample workout. That's the put it on your hands person. Let them do some cool stuff. And we always say, like, let them grab ropes and things that are unique that they have never done before that almost anyone can do. And, give it to them at their levels. Little old lady, one rope, someone like you get 2 ropes. I'm trying to kill you because you might have been doing bodybuilding down the street. So I have to prove that it's hard enough, right? So you kind of have to, you can systemize even who is going through the process and how you're taking them through that, right? Sample workout, endorphins are high. I'm excited. Maybe I cried. I saw that there's a process to what we do. You got my endorphins up. If I'm insecure, you prove that I can do it. If I'm advanced, maybe you prove that you can kick my butt. You take me back in the office. Now you're an expert in my eyes. You got my trust. We've had a conversation. Now you say, listen, our most successful clients can do this. And that's part 4, right? So peel the onion, show them a process, which is we use FMS, give them a little sampler, take them in the office and tell them why all that stuff was relevant and what your prescription is, and slide it over. And for gosh sakes, just make your suggestion and be quiet and let them make a decision, right?
Yeah.
So,
I love that. And there's a couple of points. One, I love that you say it's prescriptive, because I get all the time people calling my club saying, how much you charge for personal training? And my answer is I never give prices over the phone because to me, it's like calling a doctor's office. I got this thing on my arm. What's it going to cost for me to get it off?
Yeah. How bad does it bother you? Right. Right.
Yeah, I have no idea. You're going to have to come in. We're going to have to run some tests and see what's what.
Right.
So I tell them the same thing. It's like, I don't know. We have memberships from here to here. I'm sure we can find one that works for you. But let's come in and let's take you through the assessment so that we can figure out exactly what would be best for you.
Right.
And then the other thing is, that's a brilliant point of when clients come in, first of all, they're intimidated to come in. I haven't met one person that's come in my club who hasn't been intimidated to come in.
Yep.
Even if their spouse is coming in, they're still intimidated to come in.
Yeah, nobody needs to come in and admit that look at like I know if it's like you, Jim, it's like we have the female engagement first and then they'll bring the husband, right? That's been a traditional pattern, if you will, in our businesses. And when the husband comes in, there's like a little bit of machismo, right? You're going to hear about, he's 57 years old, but you're going to hear about his high school bench press, right? You just have to go through that. Well, that's just a part of that insecurity, right? So you're 100% right.
Yeah. And then, but them telling you what they think you want to hear.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point. Yeah. But also how you modify the sales approach to reach them. And I think that's really important because I think a lot of trainers, especially young trainers and trainers just starting out in business, they have this almost militant mentality of like, no, we're going to do this. And because this is what works and there's no deviating and everything like that. And the story that comes to mind that really shows how that could be the wrong approach is when you were telling us that story. I think it was in one of your presentations about the woman that you did the full FMS on. When you had to have her do the core push-up. And then after that, you said, okay, we're going to have to modify it based on the client. You want to share that story?
Yeah, man, of course. Of course. And after I tell it, everybody will know why I like to share it. It's like my best. But listen, when FMS first came out, and listen, we love functional movement screen, right? So we're like, man, this is going to be awesome. This is going to be a game changer for us. But we were young in it, and we were very technical at the time. So it was like, we still are, but like, marry that with like kind of some of the points that you were just talking about. So we were running this FMS to its fullest. Anybody that's familiar with functional movement screen has ever done it will understand it's pretty damn technical. Like most of your coaches can't even pass it. It's like there's a 1, 2, 3 score, a 0 of pain, but a perfect score is like a 21. Well, there's some shit on there that's like circus tricks, man. Like, there really is. And so to take someone who's unfit and remember this is happening as part of my sales process and have them do something during the first visit to the gym that's nearly impossible, that feels like a circus trick, is a huge mistake, right? Huge mistake. So, shame on us. This is maybe 12 years ago, 15 even, when FMS first came out. I don't remember, but we were like one of the first ones certified. We brought it back to the club. We were so excited. I was actually doing some of the sales and assessments at this time. So I had a lady come in. She's about 40 pounds overweight. And, one of the tests, if you're familiar with FMS, is called a trunk stability push-up, which is basically a mechanically disadvantaged push-up, right? So we get this poor lady on the floor. Man, she couldn't do a knee push-up if I put a gun to her head, right? But yet I've got her all spread out like a flying squirrel. Your arms are over your head, your toes are back, and I'm giving her these instructions like, okay, bring your whole body off the ground at the same time, and she like musters up all of her strength, gives it all she has, and nothing happens. She's literally glued to the floor, right, from her forehead to her knees. And of course, I'm like self-conscious. I mean, I understand. I have enough emotional intelligence to understand. Like, she's probably not comfortable. She's probably thinking, "Why the hell am I doing this, bro?" But I'm trying to I'm going to run this thing with integrity. So I give her the a little bit of humor. I'm like, hey, whenever you're ready, And I'm sure she just wants to flip me off. And so she's like, okay. So she musters up everything she's got. This time really giving it everything, right? And creates so much internal pressure. Doesn't move, by the way, still glued to the floor, but so much internal pressure that she blows a fart, a big one, like loud. So no one can ignore it, not even me, right? And listen, I'm a guy, I like to fart. It's funny. Like, who doesn't like farts, right? I'm like, but when you're in this setting and you've got someone who's very insecure and it's their first time in the gym ever and they fart, it's like, it's not good, bro. So she gets up, very indignant, walks out, grabs her purse and just leaves. And the whole time I'm chasing her like an idiot, and I'm like, oh, it's okay. Everybody farts, I always joke, like if I had one on deck, I would have just been like, and hey, look, me too. Like we all fart, just to make her feel better. But man, it was And I remember walking back in from that, and I'm like, all right, like everyone loses in this situation. This poor lady's never going to go to a gym again. Who knows? I mean, we could have shortened her lifespan. You know, God, it's terrible, right? Like we're not doing her any service, and it certainly isn't helping my business. I can't realize this revenue and help this person. So it's like a lose-lose. So I walked back in from that day and said, never again. No, we're never doing this shit again. As a result of that, we started hacking the FMS, right? So we started running like a jacked up version of it. Well, any FMS purist was like having a heart attack. Like, oh, you can't do that. I'm like, well, I'm not going to run the real one because we know what happens there, right? People are going to fart and leave. So we ain't doing that either. And I finally got a call from Gray and Lee, who were the founders, and they were like, "Hey, we want to talk about this FMS." I was like, "Ooh, it's going to be bad." Like they even had me up to headquarters, which is way out in the backwoods. I was like, "I'm never coming back." Kissing my family, good knowing you guys will be buried in the woods. Here's where I'll be. Here's the GPS coordinates. Never going to make it back. Both of them like to hunt. I'm like, I'm done. Yeah. But I get up there, and to their credit, they're like, "Hey, we realize this is way too hard for Gen Pop. We realize there is a massive opportunity here," and then we worked with them to build what we call the modified screen, right? And they came down actually to our facility, which is cool. And we brought over the clients from our other facilities. So both of our facilities, they screened every single person. And all of our clients were super excited because they knew we were bringing in this like high, tech company to do this like personal assessment. And they all wanted to be involved. So they screened like 525 people or something ridiculous in like 2 days. I felt so sorry for the screeners, right? For the guys that were doing it. And what they wanted to do, Jim, was they were going to compare like the full screen to the modified screen. Like, would we have missed anything if we just ran the modified screen? And thankfully, the answer was no. That we would have gotten everything we needed to service them as a Gen Pop adult, right, and get them into these programs. So yeah, man, props to those guys for coming up with that. And then now we have a way to measure movement that still gives us that great sales tool and that little bit of what about me, but it just doesn't make people feel so stupid when they do it.
Yeah. And from a technical standpoint, you're absolutely right. Even if you do a modified screen and you get people in to start moving, working out, their movement's going to improve. Yeah. Even if you don't do the full screen. So, but like if you get people to, this is my general manager, Deb. Deb, say hi to Rick.
Oh, hi. I'm sorry.
She forgot her stuff in my office. She's coming in to get it. This is a live broadcast, ladies and gentlemen.
Deb's like, oh
no. Yeah, no, she's a rock star. She really is.
Come on.
But but if you get all your clients farting, you're never going to make a sale.
No,
you're never going to make that sale. So, but
let's tag that, man. If you want to put this in the show notes, if people don't learn anything else today, learn this. If your client farts during your starting point or initial session, you're not going to close them. If you do, call me. I need any kind of super salesperson on my team at any time. So call me. But otherwise, you ain't closing that person.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. And I want them to call me first because I want to hire them.
Jim's podcast. So call him first.
Exactly.
You didn't want to take it. So.
But it's to your point that you have to think through the eyes of a client. I think a lot of young trainers only see it through their lens, and they don't see it through the lens of the client. From the marketing standpoint to the sales, to the service, to retention, all of that, you have to look at it through the eyes of your client. From no matter what system you put in place, that's the approach you have to take.
Yeah, man, there's an old marketing adage that always reminds me of like how trainers sell. And I've been guilty of this. Obviously, I just told you a story about it. And it goes like this. Don't sell the braces, sell the smile, right? And they use sort of orthodontics as an example. It's like, you don't see a billboard for an orthodontist with like somebody with like braces all over their teeth, right? With their skin stuck in it. And it doesn't say like, hey, you're not going to be able to eat an apple for a month, when we tighten these things up. It's like, that's the process, right? What they do show is the smiling face. They paint the picture of what the end game is going to look like. They don't tell you how bad it's going to suck when you have braces for 3 years. It's terrible, because nobody would do it. It's like, yeah, but you want a great smile, right? So I think for trainers, it's real important to hear that, because for those guys, just paint the picture to the end and just get them to the end game. Try not to sell all your tools and all your processes, right? Imagine if I took that same lady that farted out there later and said, hey, here's a steel ball, right? We call it a kettlebell. You'll probably call it a kettleball because people do that. And then I want you to pick it up and like swing it like you're humping someone, like do that. That's awesome, right? And I got all geeked out on all the things that were in there. You have 30 degrees of knee valgus, Mrs. Johnson. That's something we're going to address. She's like, man, I just want to lose 20 pounds. Like all this stuff is great, but just get me to my goal, right? So I think all those things are important. I'm not discounting the technical side of training. I think people want to understand that you know what you're doing, but I think if you go too far, you're selling the braces, not the smile, right? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Jim?
I agree with you 100%. I see that a lot. You have to talk in the terms that of your clients and what they want, what their goals are.
Yeah.
Like for me, when I teach a client a kettlebell swing or even an RDL with a kettlebell, they're like, now, why do I need this move? I go, well, do you want your butt to be tighter? Like, oh yeah. Okay. Well, then learn how to do this move correctly and your butt will be tighter. All right. I can sit here and break it down for you, but that's the gist, you know, like you said, that's the smile. Why are you doing kettlebell swings? Why are you doing RDLs? Because you want a higher, tighter, firmer butt. Who doesn't?
Right.
You know,
you and I can split hairs on the hip hinging and all the other benefits, right? Oh, it's single leg. It's like, oh, yeah, you have to have rotational core strength. There's contralateral move. Oh, yeah, great. Look, all that has great ancillary benefits. Guess what? If they had back pain, I'd probably talk about that, right? Mm-hmm. That was their goal. They want to lose weight. Great, I'm talking about that. They want to have a nice ass. I'm talking about that. It doesn't matter, right? Tell them what they want. It's like, I mean, most people that are on here that study strength conditioning, you know who Mike Boyle is, right? I can always remember, like, first seminar I ever saw from him is like, again, 12, 15 years ago. And he's like, you know, it was like a new thing to throw a med ball against the wall, which is kind of funny now, but that was the thing then, right? So he's throwing it against the wall and he's like, hey, if you play tennis, it's great for tennis. If you want a tight stomach, it's great for that. You know, and it's the same kind of thing we're saying, right? And he's been saying that with his athletes. Swing a racket, great. Swing a baseball bat, great. You know, swing a stick for hockey, great. It's like, we all need it. Just speak the language that rings true with that person, right?
Yeah, they say if like your elevator pitch, if you can explain what you're doing, trying to do with them to a 5-year-old, then you truly understand it. And I think that's such the case. If you get in an elevator with someone and they say, oh, you know, I can't work out because I have knee pain. And you're like, oh, well, then, you know, maybe you have knee valgus or, you know, maybe, you know, something else is going on, some kind of technical term that's going on with the knee pain.
Disease. I don't have knee valgus, bro. Can you see that?
Yeah. And instead of saying, you know, hey, we have a lot of experience with clients like that, and we've really helped them. I would love to see if we'd be able to help you. Boom.
Yeah, no
that's
problem.
it.
All I have knee pain. Yeah, I do it all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. So, and then let's talk about, let's break down your onboarding real quick, and then I want to close out onboarding and servicing. What does that look like?
Yeah, onboarding is, we figured that the first 90 days are the most critical, right? And so there's a lot of ways that you can onboard people. Like, you know, you can do it from a business standpoint. Like if you have other products and services that you want to expose your customers to, there's enough softwares these days where you can set up some automated text messages and emails that would go out to them, sort of a la Don, right? You're talking about from Gold. It's like Don Murphy. It's like, you know, he's got a big ass gym, man, 120,000 or was it 78,000 square feet in that one. And it's like he wants people to know that he has training and this and that because they just signed up for a regular, you know, $50 a month membership. So it's really smart. If you have sups and nutrition and massage, you know, great way to trickle that stuff out. So there's the business side of it, making them aware of how things work. But I think there's also the customer service side of it. We know from data, not only from us, but other clubs, 90 days is the most critical time. So start with something as simple as, no matter what kind of level of service they end up in, you're going to meet with them twice a month for the first 90 days. This is the kind of stuff too, you guys, this is the kind of selling the braces that actually works, right? Imagine telling someone, hey, we're going to bring you in. We're going to do a detailed goal analysis of where you are so that we can best place you for success. And you know what? You know, everyone wants accountability, right? We're going to meet with you twice a month for the first 3 months just to make sure that you're on track and things are going well. We're not going to get that at any other fitness brand, certainly not the big branded, you know, franchise brands, not at all. So it's like, hey, this is part of our systems. You can advertise that. And it's really a smart way to market, to like lay out the journey for a customer, right? First you come here, then you go there, then we do this, then we do that. It shows people how they're going to get from point A to point B so they can visualize it. Even if you can have some basic, you know, visuals built, right? Some templates built out, put them on your site. So first 90 days, meet with them a couple times a month. And then after that, a once a month meeting is all you need to do. That for us, honestly, covers it all. If you can sit down with somebody and get them into your office, or just there's a 15-minute sit downs twice a month, they're going to be fine. They're not always going to take advantage of it, but you should be offering it. And you can cue a reminder for that. You can set it up to cue reminders for that via text message, right? So, hey, by the way, it's time for you to set up we call it accountability session. So time for you to set up your accountability session. Click here, schedule it, great. Go from there. So I would say ongoing during your onboarding process, first 90 days is most critical. Meet with them more often, get them what they need. Obviously, you can be sending messages around other things, supplements, things like that you might sell in your gym, which also, by the way, are going to help them get where they want to be, right? And then after the 3 months, you just need to meet with them monthly after that. And you can just adjust, man. People's fitness journeys don't go straight, as you know, right? They go up and down. And so they're going to be down in the trough. Sometimes they're going to go to Italy for a month with their friends and gain a bunch of weight. And it's like, man, it's a journey, right? So you just try to meet them where they are. And the only way to do that is to sit down and get a little FaceTime with them sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think the first 90 days is so critical because I forget who said it, but they said the biggest reason most studios lose people is non-use and non-results. So you get somebody who is intimidated come through the door, you manage to close them and set them up on the membership. And you say, and most people, they get the payment information. They're like, great, we're done. Boom. But then this person leaves and they're like, okay, what do I do now? How do I schedule? What do I do when I show up? How do I get the most out of this membership? They have no instruction manual whatsoever.
Yeah, don't assume that all that stuff is easy to understand, right? I think that you and I, when we talk about it, things are quick. Hey, what do you use for this? What do you do for that? Do you use this software? Use this widget? What are your texts? It's like we're having this high level conversation. So you can fall into the trap of falling in love with the processes of how you do business more than the business itself. And you kind of forget that like people don't even understand any of the basics. Like, like maybe you need a concierge session to say like, hey, it's your first session in the gym. Welcome. And this is beyond the first session, right? Like maybe it's the second session where you walk them through and say, here's where you put your stuff down. Here's where you grab a towel. This is so-and-so. You don't have to check in. We're going to check you out later. I mean, whatever your processes are, right? And then when you come in, you're going to do this and you're going to do that. Basically, this is how we do things to make them feel comfortable, right? So depending on what type of clientele you're servicing, even that's not a bad idea. But I don't think you can overdo simple communication, like that 5-year-old level communication they talked about.
Yeah, I agree. And so you can even send it out on text like Don Murphy does, like a little text video of onboarding clients. But so it's essential for them to feel comfortable, make sure they're getting the most out of the membership. But it's also that golden period where you can set them up for success. If you get them, like you said, hey, why don't you try out this large group class, or why don't you let's talk about your nutrition, what's going on with your nutrition. That's when they're most open to changing their nutrition, or supplementation, especially if they're trying to lose weight and they're cutting back on calories, they're going to need supplements. Referrals, that's also the golden window for them to refer their friends and family in. So if you can take care of them in that 90-day period, that honeymoon period, then they're going to be feel a little bit more comfortable in the gym. They're going to be able to get a little bit more out of the membership. They're going to come more because they feel comfortable. They're going to get better results because they're paying attention to things that you're holding them accountable to pay attention to. And they're going to send you more new clients because, they're really enjoying their experience at the gym. So that 90-day window is crucial. So that's great information, Rick. And then the last one is the service. So what does that look like for you guys?
Yeah, so you're just talking about like ongoing, like what are we doing for folks, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, it's pretty much that. Like, listen, I kind of covered some of it before. Like, we're going to try to meet with everybody every month, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it's important for us. I like, in this crowded market right now, I like a more personal approach. I think we talked about earlier, like the pendulum will swing wildly towards like metabolic type training and heart rate stuff. I think you see it swinging back a bit more, when you look at the trends moving into 2020, it's like, hey, more specificity, right? So what does that mean? Well, even if your workouts are the same because you have a similar philosophy for everyone, it's just 12 degrees separated from this kind of push up to that, right? I get that. But I think it's more important that they understand how they fit into that. Like, why are they doing that, right? And the only way to do that is, again, pull them out and put them in those appointments. Now, I will say this, and this is something it's really interesting. So for any of your readers that, or any of your listeners that like to read, I would recommend Moments by Dan and Chip Heath. Great book, man. Great book. And Moments talks about just that, how to create like what they call peaks. In the book, they talk about peaks and pits, right? Peaks are like really high level experiences for your customers. And what they found with all companies is when they run what it's called a net promoter score, so an NPS score. If you guys haven't heard of that, it's like 1 through 6 score, like 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest. 1 through 6 is what they call a detractor, someone who like actively doesn't like your business, especially the lower down they go on the scale. 7 and 8 are on the fence. 9 and 10s are promoters. And obviously you want 9 and 10s, but you're going to get an average score. So your goal should be constantly be moving that NPS score up. Now, a lot of people use this, retail and everyone else. What they found in the book is when they did studies around the NPS score is that most people spent most of their time trying to put out fires with their lower end detractors, right? Like your squeaky wheels get the oil, right? Your complaining customers, if you will, make you feel like everyone's upset about something when it's really 3 out of 300, right? Mm-hmm. And people will chase those people around trying to make them happy. As a matter of fact, you become so paralyzed that you're afraid to make any mistakes. So you just spend all your time putting out fires and providing this sort of consistently okay experience, which is good. But what we fail to do is take our middle level people, like our 6, certainly our 7s and 8s, right? People that we can move from kind of meh to, promoters. Those are the people that we should really be pouring into. So I would say to your listeners, anyone that's that client that's been coming to the gym 3 days a week for 2 years, you literally just take them for granted. I've been guilty of this. You're like, oh, that's Sally. She'll be here forever. She loves us. Well, does she really? What if something opens closer to Sally's house? Like, how butthurt would you be if Sally quit and went somewhere else? And we all have those people that leave, and it's like a shock, probably a healthy shock to our system. Like, what can we do better? And I would say what you could do better is spend a lot less time trying to put out fires with your grouchy clients and spend more time trying to create more peaks for your everyday clients that are kind of like on the fence. Maybe they're those long-term clients that don't give you any referrals, right? Just because they're like, okay, I'm in this slow habit loop. You're close to my house. I need to get a workout in, whatever. What about putting more energy into creating amazing moments for them and not worrying so much about putting out fires? So an example of that would be like we got it from the Ritz-Carlton. We call it surprisingly personable, right? So we set aside a $300 a month campaign for this exact thing where we're going to take our everyday regulars that don't expect it and surprise them with some kind of a gift or something outside the norm, right? Not a birthday card because they get that from their dentist, not that kind of stuff. And I mean, like, maybe you're talking to them about they don't like vegetables, and then you have an idea about some special spices that make their vegetables taste better. You order them off of Amazon, and you present them to them next time they come in, right? That's the kind of stuff that people take pictures of, post on their own Facebook page, go absolutely nuts because it's surprisingly personable, right? And so we set a budget around it. We have to spend $300 a month on it. And we do that just for those middle level clients. Now, the business metrics on that, you guys, is that those middle level people, if you can move them up from kind of meh down the middle to promoters, they typically spend 4 times as much money. So that person might end up being, when they're more involved, that might mean they're bringing you more referrals. It might be along those lines, but it might be that they're buying more subs. Maybe they go from 2 days a week to 3 days a week, right? So spending time trying to make your grouchy people move up into like kind of lukewarm is crazy. Spend more times on peaks. Don't worry about your pits so much. And if your peaks are that high, you're going to have pits. You just try to do your best to minimize them, but don't spend so much time and energy on that, right? So that's one way that, like, long-term, that's a good lens on your business to keep your customer engagement and sort of retention up high with the people that really matter in your business that we might take for granted.
That's why I was so excited to get you on the show for things, insights like that.
The 2-hour show now.
Yeah, you get insights, like you said. Even though you're super successful, you still like hang around people who are operating at a higher level than you are right now. Pushing yourself and growing yourself.
Oh,
and I really,
what is it? You're at the wrong table if you're the smartest person at the table, and it's like I love to sit at a table where I'm out of my comfort zone. And that's one thing I think in growing the company. If anybody here is like, hey, well, how do I go to the next level or whatever, you literally have to change who you are. And the only way to do that is to associate yourself with people who either are doing what you want to do or, are doing something similar. Get out of your space a little bit, get uncomfortable, right, and grow that way. So yeah, man, it's good. I appreciate you saying that because it's been a hard transition for me, but it's been a good one,
Yeah, you've done it successfully. I've known you for a couple of years now, and just the difference between then and now is noticeable. And
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and the way you grow. But it's the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right?
Yeah, yep.
So your last one brought up two great points for me. One is that 80-20 rule is I think, like, what did they say is like 20% of your clients is where you make 80% of your revenue. And then there's also the 20% of the clients that are 80% of your headaches. We had a client who was like a complainer, a pit, right? And to the point where none of my trainers, none of my employees wanted to deal with him. And they would always say, talk to Jim. So then I would have to deal with this client, and nothing I did seemed to make them happy. And then finally, they said, I think I'm gonna try this Jim over here. And I said, okay, well, I hope you're happy over there. If you're not, come back. Yeah. But I hope you find what you're looking for over here, because I don't think we've been able to provide it for you. And she was like, you're not gonna fight for me? I'm like, no. Like, if you're going to be more happy over there, then go for it. And then I told my trainers at the next staff meeting, and you would think I gave them all a raise. They were so happy. Morale went up, everything, so not every client's going to be your ideal client. And that's the hardest lesson for me to learn, is that, because I wanted everybody, but not everybody's going to be your ideal client. Some clients you're better off without. And then the other thing, and I was talking to this with Frank Nash in Chicago, is that with all of the automation, all of the software, all of the systems that, is incorporated in the software, going back to the golden days of Facebook, where you could throw $100 at an ad and get, 30 new clients, those days are gone and coming back. But the point is that all of that technology has made us lazy. It's made me lazy. Yeah. So picking up the phone to call someone, sending out a personalized email, a personalized text, going to local businesses, taking part in the community and community events, going face to face, having an actual conversation has gone by the wayside of all of this automation. So I think it's good to have systems. To your point, it's good to have systems and automation in there. But you have to mix that with that personal touch, especially if you're a smaller studio, because that is the one thing that you can do better than any big box gym. Yeah. Do you find that to be true?
Differentiator, right? Like, anybody can set up automation, but is somebody going to, like, if you miss a workout at, say, at 9 a.m., is that big box gym or even that franchise brand, are they going to call you after their shift? Like, if you were doing it at 9 a.m., are they going to call you at 12:30 on the way out the door and be like, hey, Jim, we missed you today, man. Like, I got you down for Thursday, but let me know that you're okay, because we really miss seeing you today. That is not hard to do. You might have 3 or 4 of those. You just send it as a text, hey, missed you today. Hope you're good. Let me know if anything's up, missed you today, but we'll see you Thursday. It's like, damn, somebody's there that cares about me, that knows I wasn't even there today, right? That's the easiest thing in the world. And there's most gyms don't do it, because you're right. We all want that automated approach where you just turn something on. And I would say that, like, in that automation that you're talking about, that should only be used to drive more human engagement, right? If you want to send out a text reminder for an in-person meeting, I'm down with that. But if you think you can just send out automated text messages for people that you haven't seen in a while or whatever, and that's going to drive them to come in, you're crazy. It's not going to work.
Yeah, I agree.
You feel it, man. It's like, it's so easy to sniff out an automated message from a real heartfelt text message, right? And like, throw something personal in there. Hey, I know you had a big weekend with your kids' ball games. Maybe you're tired, that's why you missed today. But let us know you're doing all right, and I'll see you Thursday. Yeah. How do you use that?
Yep. And then it also works the other way. If they have an appointment and they don't show up and they don't hear from you, they're like, they don't care.
Well, exactly. Yeah. So if you're showing them you care. So, like, that's the easiest. Like, there you go. There's another nugget. That's like the easiest retention strategy in the world, is have all your coaches at the end of their shift reach out to anybody that was on the schedule via text message. There's a million text services you can use, so they're not using their own personal cell phone. So it's a professional boundary. Have them text everybody that didn't show up that day on that morning shift, and then again after that evening shift, and ask them how they're doing, and try to put something personal in there. Sign it with their own name, and put someone else's name in there. So I don't know, man. It's easy stuff like that. That stuff, though, has to be systemized, right? Like, you as the owner have to hold people accountable. Has to be written, like, this is what we do. You get here 30 minutes early before your shift. You check to see if there's any new people coming in. Does anybody have any injuries? You get your day lined up. You run the play into the shift. Okay, shut it down. You're going to have to pay them for this, but it's worth it. There's another 30 minutes left over. I want you to text any new client that came in that day and tell them great job. That was great to meet them. Can't wait to see them again. And I want you to text anybody that didn't show up saying, hey, we missed you today. Put something personal in there, and then you can head out. That's it. That's the easiest thing in the world you could do. That would drive your retention from 50% to 70%, guaranteed.
Yeah, no question about it. I agree 100%.
Easy stuff.
Well, we're going to bring part 1 to a close, and I'm going to I get lucky enough to have Rick for back-to-back episodes. Yeah. Yes, this is becoming a theme. And on our upcoming show, we're going to be talking about current trends, where the fitness market is going, what you need to do to continue to differentiate yourself going forward in this fitness industry, because it's only becoming more competitive, not less. So you have to be able to rise above the noise and see what's ahead and prepare for it. So that's going to be on the next podcast coming up right after this one with Rick Mayo. But I want to close out with my question. So you took a couple of questions from me, but that's okay because, you're smarter than I am, which is why I like hanging out with you. But you've gone from Good Bodies to now the licensing to the most profitable gym in America, to franchise, now to licensing, now to franchise. So in a perfect world, and you're my hero because you're able to take 1 month vacations and take your motorcycle around New Zealand.
Yeah.
Which is fucking awesome. I love that.
Yeah,
So in a perfect world, what's where would you want to be?
Yeah. So you mean at the end of the day, like what I want to happen?
Yeah.
God, man, that's a tough question. Well, you didn't tell me this was coming. I'm not prepared. This is a tough one, Jim. Hey, look, man, I don't even know. Here's what I know. Like one thing I've started in the last few years is things that I never thought I would do. But again, you got to change who you are if you want to end up in a different place, right? So gratitude journals and writing down these sort of intentional ideas, and that probably shocks everyone that knows me that I would ever do that. I'm not touchy-feely. I'm all X's and O's, but it's important, And so one of those things is what are you doing? And kind of what are your I am blank, right? That's a good exercise every morning. What are you doing? I am what? Are you building $100 million company? Or are you trying to change lives? What is it? And I think for me, it's really about the game. I don't think my lifestyle would be any different if I had, 4,000 franchisees. I don't, we got a couple thousand licensees. It's going great. But for me, it's the game, man. I love it. When I talked earlier about the hard work being the juicy part, the good stuff, right? That's how I feel. So honestly, I do it because I like it. I get up every day, and then some days are just not fun. I could be selling widgets, right? It's I'm so detached from the product. I'm meeting with attorneys and going over legal stuff, and it's just it's not fun. It's just business, right? It doesn't matter. I like it. I'm learning all the time, getting up, hustling, learning, and what else are you going to do with yourself, right? I've aimed at something, and I'm going to go at that thing as hard as I can and try to be the best that I can be at it. And I may not hit my target. I may not be the biggest fitness franchise in the world. I don't know. Hell, that's not even my target, but you know what I'm saying? I might miss, and that might change year over year, kind of a little bit where we're headed, right? But all I know is that if I get up every day, I love the work itself. I sort of embrace the sucky parts, right? Suck it up and understand that that's the good stuff, that I'm building armor and knowledge, and I'm a different person next year because of it. Then regardless of where I end up, I am infinitely better off wherever that is than I am right now, if that makes sense, right? So I don't have an end game. There is no end game. I guarantee you, if I got a $400 million valuation tomorrow on the franchise, I still wouldn't be satisfied or finished. I'd still want to get up and do something, right? Maybe I'd move into a whole different sector of business. I don't know. I don't know. But to me, what I'm aiming at is to be better than I am today at whatever it is that I'm doing. And right now it's trying to service and help fitness business owners do better in their business and make more money and help more people, right? And wherever we end up with that, man, I'll be happy. But right now I'm just embracing every day and trying to work my ass off.
Yeah, I love that answer. I love that answer. That's definitely going to be a sound bite from this episode for sure.
Work your ass off? Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I thought the fart one would be the soundbite.
Oh, that one too. You know, it's an A/B test.
You want more dramatic if you fart. Or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, look, it's been awesome. So thanks for having me on. And I love it, man. I love the work you're doing. I haven't even had a chance to prop you with the podcast. It's like, it's one of the better ones, man. You dig in, you're a humble guy, you're successful in your own right. So appreciate what you're doing for the industry with this podcast, man. It's good work.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Same thing with you. It's just, I love it. You know, I love what I do and get up and want to learn more every day. So my next question is in the long time and the long history that you have in the fitness industry, what has been the biggest surprise that you've had to deal with that you did not see coming?
Biggest surprise in the fitness industry. I think it's been more difficult. The surprising things for me is when I got what I wanted, like when I used to be on the floor every day, here's an example. And I would say like, man, if I just didn't have to be on the floor in my business every day. Right. And then I got that, like I worked to that, you know, and I got it. And I think the thing that's been most surprising on this journey is that every time I've reached a sort of a milestone or maybe a short-term goal, I haven't been satisfied. It's actually been more difficult when I got there than I thought it would be, right? Like I talked about earlier about solving different problems. You know, when I worked from 6 to noon and 4 to 8, I was solving what kind of food I had prepped for that week, right? Mm-hmm. Now I'm solving different problems. In a lot of ways, the problems I'm solving now are not nearly as enjoyable as what kind of food I'm going to eat for lunch, right? Or if I'm going to get my workout in that day. So I'd say that's been most surprising is that I've never felt like, like I've arrived, like this is it. And for some reason, I had this misconception that there's this, if I was just here, I would be so much better off. And then, okay, no, that's not true. But if I get to here, then I'm going to be really awesome, right? I'll just be so happy. And what I've learned is what I told you before. It's like, there's no end game, man. There is no like happy. There's just purpose or not purpose. There's never getting to a place where you're just like, I'm out, I'm happy, right? There's not. It's just like you're in a different place. You're solving different problems. And the juice is the journey, man. It's getting up every day and embracing the hard work and understanding that you're upskilling and you're learning and you're armoring yourself emotionally and business acumen wise against this world that you're trying to plow through. That's what it's all about. And I think that's the biggest revelation for me is there is no end game ever. You're just aiming at something and you're going to be infinitely better tomorrow if you keep aiming at it and doing your best, but there's no end game. So for any of your listeners that say like, yeah, man, I'd love to do what Rick's doing, man, that'd be awesome. I'd get out of my gym, start teaching other people what to do. Yeah, it's awesome. But I'm also traveling 42 weeks out of the year and I got a shitty back now, you know? It's like, it's just different problems, man. So enjoy where you are, embrace the things that you're doing, dig in hard and understand that the hard work around what you're doing currently is going to make you better for your future, but you're always solving problems, man. And there's always a challenge. So I don't know. It seems like I'm circling back to the same points, but I hope that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense.
You guys to death in here.
No. And I love that you have that common theme. My last question, then I'll let you go. So obviously you're into self-development. So you mentioned the book Moments. What were the last 3 books that you read, podcasts you listened to, mastermind groups that you're part of, or associations you're on the board of that where you go for your personal and business development that you could recommend for listeners?
For sure. So one of them is obviously STS, which is an acronym for Secret Trainer Society. That's our group, and that's just something we started out of the labor of love. And as Jim knows, it's not super expensive to be in it, but we try to just pick the best of the best to be in there. So when we go to those meetings, even though we're quasi leading the meetings with just exercises and whatnot, I learn more at those than I would ever give, right? There's so many great ideas coming from these dynamic owners like yourself, Jim, that by the way, if you guys don't know, Jim's in the group, right? So, you know, it's like we're talking about how he manages a gym and a podcast on the side, what all's involved in that lifestyle, right? It's like I learned so much from being around peers like that and not always being the smartest person in the room. I certainly have my skill set, but there's people in that room that are a hell of a lot better than me at different functions, right? So I'd say STS. I'd say get out of your industry a little bit. So another one for me is another group called Vistage. Vistage is a worldwide organization, and you could just join in and be part of a Vistage group. There's also other groups like that. So these would be good for any of your listeners to get out of the fitness industry and just learn about general business. And it's uncomfortable, but again, if you're uncomfortable, you're probably at the right table. And I've learned a ton from my Vistage group, like the pest control guy I was telling you about. It's like, wow, I thought I had it bad. Like, that's tough business, right? But you learn a lot about that, how to handle yourself and how to handle employees and just any business challenges. And then, as far as books, like Moments was great. I like anything about human behavior, irrationally, predictably irrational, or irrationally predictable. I think it's predictably irrational. That was a great book. Just sort of the psychology around the economy, really, if you will, right? And like why people buy things, how they behave. I think that's just fascinating because that's a big part of what we do. And I really like Traction. I read Traction. This is my third time going through it. Every time I read it differently. And for me, it's just because I'm a little bit detached. I've got these different business entities running, and I've got different people in charge of them. So it's really important to me that I organize my day in a way that my meetings are meaningful, and that we leave those meetings with actionable steps, and that people know what their role is and what they're responsible for, right? So we can solve like the most critical problems now and not